Well, they say three is a crowd, but a 500-man centipede? That's a fucking crowd, man. What is up, everyone? Movie Worm back again with another shocking movie review episode. This is going to be for the Human Centipede Part 3. This is directed by Tom Six and stars Dieter, Laser and Laurence R. Harvey. This tells the story of a crazed prison warden who sets out to make his own human centipede using the prisoners doing time in his jail. Well, we are at the third and final part of this sick and twisted trilogy. Now, if you want to check out the reviews of the other two movies in this trilogy, the link for them will be down below. But let's just get into the Human Centipede 3, which for me was actually a first time watch. Now, I was actually intrigued by this one, the way it was all taking place in this prison, and he had this crazy prison warden. I thought, you know what, that's like a little bit of a different direction there. You know, he's trying something new, Tom Six. And I also had in the back of my mind that it might start to make a mockery of itself, to be honest. And whilst it doesn't quite go that deep into it, it does make fun of the subject matter it has at hand, and it just seemed a little bit too more animated than the other films and a little bit less serious in tone. One of the first things I noticed about this was actually Dieter, Laser and Laurence R. Harvey are the stars of this film. Laser playing the crazy prison warden and Harvey playing his accountant, but it's actually a movie within a movie within a movie now. They're playing totally different characters, and if you remember in the first film, Laser is the villain, and the second film, you know, you've got Martin there, played by Harvey, who's actually watching Laser in the first film commit these acts, and that's what inspires him. But here, they're both in the movie playing totally different characters. And that's when I thought Tom Six is just going to be trying to have fun with this movie. He's done the shocking horror film, he's done the gross out horror film, and now it's time to just try and entertain the audience. And that's the vibe I got going into this. I mean, Tom Six is even in this film playing himself. That just adds to the little spoof type deal we've got going on here. And the film is also very, very ridiculous at times with its plot. The warden is convinced by Laurence R. Harvey's character to make a 500-man centipede towards the end of the film. But he's not going to do it in the operative way that the first two films do, where they're actually joined together. They're kind of going to just sew their mouths to people's anuses, and it's going to act as a deterrent for them to stop and think about what happens when they're released so they don't come back to jail, because 3 out of 10 prisoners apparently come back after a few years, and jail doesn't really help them out. So if they do it this way, they're not going to want to come back at all after being shit in the mouth hundreds of times.
We've got to make a human centipede of our prisoners. They will literally be on their knees begging for your mercy. It's brilliant.
It's just a very, very ridiculous way of keeping prisoners at bay when they are released from jail. But everyone just seems to go along with it. The warden's like, yeah, okay. And his boss, who, you know, runs the jail on the outside, is also just fine with it. And all the doctors within inside the prison walls are just like, hey, yeah, we can do that. And it's just very, very ridiculous at times. It feels like a very dark comedy. He's also got this secretary played by Brie Olson, who he basically just uses as a sex slave. And it's just constant sexual harassment and sexual abuse at work all the time, every single day. And she just comes to work, doesn't complain, and it's like, yeah, this is a normal everyday thing for this prison warden and his secretary. One other thing that stood out to me as well, which I kind of chuckled at, is all these prisoners in this jail have this movie day, and he's got the idea in his head to make this centipede. He's just been convinced by Laurence R. Harvey's character, the accountant there, to do this. And he decides to show them a double bill on the movie day in this cinema room that they have of the Human Centipede 1 and the Human Centipede 2. And what I find funny here is that all these prisoners are starting to get outraged towards the end of these movies, saying, turn that shit off, it's disgusting, you know, what the hell are you showing us, this is depraved. And some of them are on death row and are lifers and just the worst people you can imagine. I just find that kind of funny. Despite all that though, I found it hard to laugh at any other part of this film, mainly because it's not very funny at all, even though it tries to be. But the subject matter just feels like it shouldn't have any comedy thrown in whatsoever, because despite all these moments where it's trying to have fun and be entertaining and comedic, there are a lot of sinister scenes thrown in here. Not as bad as the second movie, really, but there are moments that kind of just catch you off guard, because you've been watching these absolutely psychopathic characters being so outrageous and out there, and then a brutal scene is thrown in and it sort of catches you off guard. You remember then that you're watching a Human Centipede film. So it's just a very, very weird tone that this movie has going for. I don't think it really works being comedic, because there are some really extreme moments in here and it just doesn't match together very well at all, in my opinion. One moment that really stood out to me is this prison warden is having a bit of back and forth with a prisoner, and he gets the guards to hold him up against the wall and pulls the guy's nutsack through his legs and just proceeds to remove his testicles. And I was watching it going, oh my god, that I was wincing at the screen, to be honest. And then he just says, yeah, cook me them for my dinner, I'm going to eat them later on. And he just proceeds to wash all the blood from the testicles that he's just come out all over his face there. And I was just thinking, oh, this is sick. And then, yeah, later on, he has brought his dinner and these little balls are just cooked in batter, and he starts eating them with a knife and fork. And whilst this is a shocking movie review episode, I'm just going to say a couple of the other scenes that really stood out to me, where I was thinking, oh my god, Tom Six is really going for it here. And even though it's a dream sequence this warden has, he has been ambushed by a lot of prisoners here, and they're basically about to rape him. And you think it's just going to go down that path, but they actually cut a hole through the side of him into his kidney and proceed to have sex with that hole into his kidney. I think he may have took a little bit of inspiration from August Underground's Mordom here, but I was just watching this going, man, what the hell is going through Tom Six's mind to put this in a movie? And it was quite hard to watch. And there's also another rape scene involving Brie Olsen's character, his secretary. She is raped by the prison warden while she's in a coma, battered and bruised. And that for me was even harder to watch. Even though the camera cuts, it's kind of left in your mind there because you know what's happening. Movies can be effective when they do this, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. People think that's a very violent film, but it's actually not. There's not much blood in it at all. It's all left to your imagination. And when the camera cut, I think that was more impactful than if we actually seen what happened. It just gives you a little snippet of what's about to happen there. Yeah, and it just didn't sit right with me whatsoever. But there's also another moment in this movie which I thought was really, really brutal. If you've heard of the torture method waterboarding, where they put a cloth over your face, I think SAS army veterans have done it to, you know, terrorists and stuff, to get answers out of them, or Guantanamo Bay or something. They pour water over a towel on your face and it makes you feel like you're drowning. That actually happens in this movie, but not with just water, no, with boiling hot scalding water. Yeah, and the guy's face is just red raw, his skin's peeling off. Yeah, it does go for it in this movie, even though it has comedic value added to it.
Medieval torture methods.
So the Human Centipede 3 does have its dark moments. However, I do think the weakest part of this film, which is meant to be the most impactful, is the actual centipede itself. And we don't see it till like the last 10 minutes. But this is like a 500-man centipede here. And it just didn't work for me. I mean, the 12-man centipede in the second film felt ridiculous, but it did actually be effective on camera. But this one, it was just silly, I thought. And the centipede can't even move. It's just a load of prisoners in this big swirly line in the prison yard. And we don't see it for very long at all. For the film that's called The Human Centipede 3, it fell flat on its face at this moment. It just felt like Tom Six wanted to push the limits even further by going bigger, but bigger isn't always better. I mean, sometimes if you do the opposite, it can be a lot more effective, or something a little bit of in a different direction. However, I do think it was very clever when we seen the human caterpillar. So there's like 10 death row inmates in there, and they chop their whole limbs off and just have them as a caterpillar, so they can't even move. They've just got to sort of wiggle around. I mean, death is probably a better option, isn't it? Let's be honest. Sadly though, my biggest problem overall with this film, and it kills me to say this, was actually Dieter Laser's character. Now, if you go and watch my review of the first movie, I'll prove it to you there that I actually really liked him in that first film. I thought he was a great villain, very, very sinister, and he had the whole look and everything. He just worked. But here, he was so frustrating to watch, very, very overpowering in every scene he's in, and I just couldn't take to him at all. I mean, this guy is just constantly shouting and screaming in literally every sentence he says in this film. And after about 10 minutes, I was thinking, wow, I don't know if I can watch this because it's so off-putting. But I powered through it for this review. And you do kind of get used to it a little bit because it's just constant. But it's still very frustrating. I mean, I had to put the subtitles on as well because he's got this German accent, and because he's shouting so much, I didn't understand the word he was saying, so I had to put the subtitles on. That's a very, very rare occurrence that if I ever have to do that in a movie, but here we are. Look, I appreciated Tom Six going in a little bit of a different direction here story-wise, but overall, I just had the same empty feeling by the end of the film that part 2 gave me. I was just kind of scratching my head thinking, what was the point in this? And I know it's probably just out to shock you, but with all the comedic elements thrown in there, it was just too much of a contrast. It just didn't go together well. You wouldn't put jam on spaghetti, would you? So why would you put these comedic elements in with so many brutal scenes? And talking of opposites, Laurence or Harvey is just the total different character to what he is in the second film here. And this is kind of weird because Laser is still playing this absolute psychopath in a different way. But Laurence R. Harvey is kind of, even though he puts the idea of the centipede in the warden's head, he's kind of this compassionate person at times, and he seems to care about the secretary. He's very, very well spoken, and he's very, very smart, and he was just the total opposite of Martin's character. Now, I think this would have worked a lot more better if they had Martin in there along with the warden, or a Martin type character. But he was just very, very forgettable in this film for me, which is a shame because I thought he was awesome in the second movie. I'm just going to go ahead and rate this movie now. I'm going to give The Human Centipede 3 a 4 out of 10. This may have been helped along with some better characters, some more thought out dialogue, and the comedic elements taken away. But it just wasn't to be, unfortunately. Okay, at the end of these shocking movie reviews, I always like to give the shock factor score, and I'm going to give the shock factor for The Human Centipede 3 a 2 out of 5. Definitely more shocking than the first film, but not a patch on the second. It definitely has its moments though, especially the testicle removal scene. Okay guys, hope you all enjoyed this review. Please consider subscribing to this channel. I've got a lot more reviews coming, lots more videos, and don't forget to check out the Human Centipede 1 and 2 movie reviews. They'll be down below. And I'm also going to rank all 3 from worst to best. And I'm also going to rank all 3 in that same video from the least most shocking to the most shocking. So look out for that. And if you want to comment about the Human Centipede 1, 2 or 3, leave it down below and I'll reply to every single one of you, I promise. Take it all easy guys. I'll see you all in the next video.